Next, we have Nien-hê Hsieh, who's an associate professor of business administration and a Marvin Bower Fellow in the General Management Unit of Harvard Business School. His research centers on the question of whether and how managers ought to be guided not only by considerations of economic efficiency, but also by values such as freedom and fairness and the respect for basic rights. He has pursued this question in a variety of contexts, including the employment relationship and the operation of multinational enterprises in developing economies. He also studies foundational aspects of this question, examining principles for rational decision-making when choices involve multiple values that appear incompatible. At Harvard's Business School, Professor Hsieh teaches leadership and corporate accountability to first-year MBA students and to executive education participants in the program for leadership development. He joined the faculty from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, where he was an associate professor of legal studies and business ethics, and served as a co-director of the Wharton Ethics Program. He holds a BA in economics from Swarthmore College, an MPhil in politics from Oxford University, and a PhD in economics from Harvard University. So, Dr. Hsieh, we've heard about the beginnings of a framework for thinking about the ethical health of organizations, and there's the suggestion that humanistic management has a distinctive role to play in that. What do you think, what, if anything, distinguishes humanistic management from other accounts of managerial responsibility, and how do those accounts relate to the concepts of humanistic management?
That's a great question, Bill. Thanks for asking it. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to actually, sorry, can anybody hear me? I have a little bit of a cold, I apologize. I'm not sure I can actually provide a definitive account of what is humanistic management, but what I wanted to do was try to see if we can't bring the idea of humanistic management into conversation with existing accounts of managerial responsibility as a way to try to sharpen just what it is that is distinctive about humanistic management. Because on the surface, I think it's actually quite appealing, right? And so to really understand and be able to press forward what it is that makes it appealing, I think it's actually helpful to try to put it into conversation with existing accounts. So if we take the definition of humanistic management that's provided here in the materials for the conference, it says humanistic management protects human dignity while promoting human well-being in an economic system in which all stakeholders are equally respected and where market mechanisms are applied to maximize societal benefits rather than individual profits. And I think that's a very appealing ideal. But take, for example, something like the Milton Friedman view of managerial responsibility. Okay, to maximize, say, profits, shareholder returns through voluntary transactions in the context of economic activity, subject to respecting the law. Right. Now, on one view as to what justifies that as the appropriate account of managerial responsibility, you could say actually looks quite close to a humanistic account of management, right? The idea is to respect individual freedom, individual choice, right? And it's through respecting individual freedom and individual choice through market exchanges that we then realize overall social well-being. Right? So the question then is, what is it about that description of the Friedman view of managerial responsibility that doesn't meet up with the account or ideal of humanistic management? And so I want to suggest basically three ways in which they might diverge, and I think those are three dimensions on which to press the account for humanistic management to perhaps define itself sharply as an alternative to what you might call sort of standard accounts of managerial responsibility. So the first dimension is the idea of what you might call preference, okay? And the second one is what I'll call power. And the third one is what I'll call purpose. So we have preference, power, and purpose, Let me say a little bit more about what I mean by each of those dimensions and where we might try to broaden or enrich the discussion. I'm be interested to hear from all of you as to how you would fill in those three areas with regard to thinking about what is humanistic management. First, with regard to preference, I think on most, not just the Friedman view, right, but most liberal views, right, preference plays a very powerful role, right, because it's both by satisfying individual preference that we achieve societal well-being, right, and similarly, it's by respecting individual preference that we also respect individual choice, right. So insofar as human dignity is about trying to achieve overall social well-being, right, and also about respecting individual choice, then the account of dignity has to do more than say something simply about it being an account that respects individual preference, right? And that, I think, is a very important area, especially because the appeal of the liberal account, right, is that it allows for a wide-ranging set of views of the good life. It allows for a wide-ranging set of views about what it is that makes people's lives meaningful. And especially in a global economy, right, being able to allow for that, I think, is very important. So the question is there a way to account for individual well-being, right, and individual choice in a way that simply isn't about respecting preference, right, that comes to the idea of humanism, but at the same time allows one to do that in the context of a global economy where there is a plurality of values and a plurality of conceptions of what it is to lead the good life. Okay? So that's sort of the first dimension. I think that would be interesting to talk a little bit more about. The second one is power. Okay? And the reason I focus on power is that I think that actually that's one area where the classical liberal view in economics doesn't do a very good job of accounting for. Because in the classical liberal view, basically everything is a matter of exchange, right? And as short of any sort of severe form of coercion or physical restriction, right, basically it's a matter of economic exchange. And when I think about the concern of dignity, my sense is that the concern with dignity really is about a concern with the appropriate exercise of managerial power. Right? In other words, that a lot of the concern with dignity is about how is it that managers are exercising their power vis-a-vis employees, for example, in the firm. And so I think actually it's one area where the humanistic approach to management actually has a lot more to say that could be quite valuable to add to the standard kind of classical account of thinking about management and economics, where everything isn't simply about exchange, but there is a dimension of power that goes unrecognized that needs to be addressed. And then the question becomes is dignity really simply just about, right, the appropriate exercise of power? So say, for example, power is non-domination, right, or power is a respect for fairness? Or is humanistic management and dignity require more than simply just what might be called either the unfair or dominating use of power, okay, which could be accommodated in a liberal approach? The last one is purpose. And by this I mean the purpose of both economic activity in general, but also the purpose of the firm. Right? Now, the standard liberal view, I think, is very conveniently melds together the view that if individuals pursue their own purpose in the context of the firm or economic activity, that leads to the overall satisfaction of social welfare. Right? And in some of the literature on humanistic management, I read about the idea of serving the common good as sort of underlying what it is the purpose of the firm and business activity should be. And I don't mean to be provocative, but I actually would just want to raise sort of one question, which is pursuit of the common good actually in tension with respect for human dignity? Okay? Because you can imagine all sorts of pursuits in the common good which require great sacrifice on the part of individuals. And so insofar as human dignity is about actually respecting individuals, I wonder if appeal to the common good is the right appeal to sort of look to with regard to thinking about purpose in the context of economic activity. Okay. At the same time, I can understand the resistance on the part of humanistic management to sort of focusing on simply the purpose of economic activity as whatever individuals themselves choose as the proper ends of the association or the proper ends for themselves. And so the question is there something in between the idea of the common good and sort of the simple pursuit of individual purpose? My own thought is that there's something there in thinking about the idea of thinking about economic activity as the creation of meaningful opportunity for individuals to pursue their own ends. And that's sort of my own view about how to think about it, and I'm happy to talk about that later. But I think trying to understand purpose is sort of one last thought. And I think one way to wrap it up is to put the question to humanistic management as follows: is whether the market is in fact a sphere in which human dignity can be realized and the right set of institutions to realize it. In other words, is there something about markets that helps to realize human dignity, right? Or is a humanistic management approach basically taking the market as given and saying, look, we have the market, okay, and it may be desirable for other reasons, and the question is to tame the market in a way to make it appropriate for human dignity. And so I think answering that question may be a way to get at some of the issues with regard to thinking about preference, power, and also purpose. So thanks very much.
Great.